I wish that I could tell you that Princess Mononoke was one of the greatest films ever made. But I can't say that because you see, the problem would be that that would be underselling it. Because Princess Mononoke, it goes way, way beyond an animated movie or film in general. Princess Mononoke is one of the greatest pieces of art that has ever been produced by anyone in the history of art. Easily one of the greatest films in the history of cinema, but as I said, it goes way beyond that. And you see, the thing about it is that it was actually really hard for me to even figure out what to say in this video. Because the greatness of the film is such that every single detail feeds into every other detail. It's almost impossible to talk about any one thing without talking about everything else in the movie. The film's a lot like an ecosystem in that way, actually, because in an ecosystem, every single thing is connected to every other thing in ways that might not seem obvious and in ways that might be kind of hard to wrap your head around. But you can't mess with any one thing in an ecosystem without affecting every other thing in the ecosystem. All right, so before I get too far into this, I will say, if you haven't seen Princess Mononoke, you should fix that problem in your life, my friend. I'm devastated by your loss. But more to the point, I am gonna, talk about spoilers and things that happen in the movie. So if you're the kind of person who cares about that kind of thing, maybe watch the movie and then come back to this video. Okay, so what exactly do I mean when I say things like the movie is like an ecosystem and everything's connected? Well, let's start off with one example. In this scene, when Ashitaka's trying to stop San from attacking Lady Eboshi and she runs in anyway, look at how San is running here. It's a pretty small detail, but it's important because it's completely different from how she was moving in the previous scene. Before this, her movements were jittery and kind of unnatural, kind of like a person trying to imitate the way that they'd seen a wolf move a little bit, It's interesting how that is. But here, she's not manic. She's not quite so wild. She's very calm. She stands there and she makes a conscious decision, completely rationally, to do this thing. Here, she has the movements of a person. And I could talk about this moment and just the way that San moves, specifically in like this scene and the preceding scene and then the next scene. I could talk about that for a long time. I'm not going to, though, because the point that I'm trying to make is that in order to say everything that I have to say about how she's moving in these scenes, I'd have to explain like everything about the movie. And basically every detail is like that. Every single detail is so intrinsically connected to like the heart of what the movie is. There's almost like no divisions. And I mean the fact that the movie is so intricately constructed, it's so masterfully crafted in every way. Nothing's wasted, nothing is out of place, nothing is there for no reason, nothing is unimportant. Everything's important. Every line, every movement, every character design, every single shot. Every single shot. There are images in this movie that are literally the most beautiful things I have ever seen in my entire life. And there's moments that are some of the most terrifying things I've ever seen in my life. And sometimes they're the same image. Which I suppose is a good segue to talk about the duality and the interconnectivity and the way that, again, everything requires, essentially for a total explanation, would require a total breakdown of every single moment in the movie, which I'm not going to do right now. But the point of comparing the film to an ecosystem and pointing out that sometimes the most terrifying moments are also the most beautiful is to get around to one of the main things that I absolutely love about Princess Mononoke and the reason why it's one of my favorite movies is that the film portrays nature, the beauty of nature, like what nature is like, and not in a Bambi kind of way or a that whole thing, the cliche, all the animals are friends, everything gets along, nature's harmonious. I heard a new age guy he told me that once in a bong shop. But the thing that a lot of people don't seem to understand is that yeah, nature's got a harmony to it, but goddamn, it's got a harmony to it the way that like a really intense metal song has a harmony to it. It's a brutal harmony. It's bloody. There's a balance, and that balance is kept through eating each other. Life, death. And just like nature, this movie is beautiful. And just like nature, that beauty is red in tooth and claw, to use a cliche, old-timey, archaic phrase that I really like. It's bloody. It's horrifying. It's terrifying. And it's wondrous. And it's almost indescribable in the way that it can affect you. So what I'm saying is that this movie, it portrays nature. And it portrays the beauty and the wonder and the awe of nature, which I'm into, man. I think that's way cool. I like nature. I like walking around in the woods. But it really portrays nature. That beauty, that awe, that wonder, it can be bad as well. And there's other moments that you're not really thinking about how beautiful it is because you're thinking about how scared you are. And you're thinking about maybe how tragic it is, this thing you're watching happen. And this is where I loop back around again in the endless, terrible, recursive cascade that is my mind. Looping back around to that thing I said about ecosystems and the movie and everything being connected. Even the fact that every detail is connected in this symbiotic, synergistic way, like an ecosystem, it's on one level, it's just a technical quality that I would say that most great films have on some level. It's one of the things that, to me anyway, makes a movie good. But in this particular case, it's particularly appropriate that it's done so well and that it fits in with the theme and the message of portraying nature. The movie is an ecosystem cinematically, but it portrays ecosystems. And importantly, it portrays humans as a part of that ecosystem. It doesn't fall into this sort of narrative trap of portraying it as some kind of even a dichotomy, because it's not. The humans that we see, they're just as brutal, they're just as violent, they're just as capable of unleashing terrors and causing destruction on horrible scales. They're just as capable of all that as the literal giant monsters. And the monsters are just as capable of, caring about their families. Even little moments, like when the one wolf has his, animal friendship moment with Yakul. And on the subject of portraying nature, another thing I really, really love about this movie is the way that, much like another movie, Watership Down, the animals are not anthropomorphized really. I mean, they're given the ability to speak, although in Watership Down they can't literally talk. They're just rabbits. It's just a thing for the audience. But in Princess Mononoke, the big god animals can literally speak. But other than that, they're not really anthropomorphized at all, which is another common narrative trap that things that portray animals fall into, or they portray them as acting like people, and they don't. You see, the wolves, they act like wolves. They have the mindsets of wolves. They think like wolves. They move like wolves. As I said, they're capable of the same sorts of emotions as people, but they express those emotions the way that wolves express those emotions. The boars don't act like people, they act like boars. And that's the real thing. Amidst all the fantastical things, the magic, the gods, all that stuff, what this movie really is just the most honest portrayal of nature that I've ever seen in a movie. It shows you what nature is, and it shows at least one sort of interpretation of mankind's place in that endless circle of life, as they say. And on top of all that, it's got the best characters in movies, and it's got the coolest things that happen in it. And it's got brilliant, perfect dialogue. The action scenes are amazing. They're perfect in every way. Brilliantly conceived, flawlessly choreographed, and masterfully executed at every moment, just like the entire rest of the movie. Because that's the other thing. The movie's just really good. Man, it's just real, real good. And maybe someday I'll make a giant 2.5 hour long frame by frame dissection of every single detail. Like I said, it would take to fully explain how brilliant the movie is. But for now, I hope you enjoyed watching, and thanks for stopping by.